The first time I saw her, she was standing on my dock in a white blazer, dark sunglasses, and heels that kept sinking into the damp wood like the lake itself didn't want her there. One hand sat on her hip, the other pointed straight at a line of tanker trucks filling up from a steel pump drilled into my shoreline. "You're late," she snapped, like I was the one who didn't belong. I stopped cold. Morning fog still hovered over the water, and the sharp diesel smell from the trucks mixed with the cold scent of pine and wet earth. Thick hoses stretched from my lake into 3 commercial tanks parked beside the boathouse my grandfather had built with his own hands. Men in reflective vests moved around like this was just another normal day. I looked back at the woman. Blonde hair. Clipboard. A perfect smile that didn't feel real. "I'm sorry," I said, steady and calm. "Who gave you permission to pump water out of my lake?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "I'm Dana Mercer, president of the HOA," she said. "This community has been using this water for a long time. If nobody explained that to you after the inheritance, that's not really my problem." That's when it hit me. This wasn't some mistake about a property line. She wasn't asking. She was acting like my 4,500-acre lake already belonged to her. Before I tell you what I uncovered next, subscribe to Behind HOA Stories for more HOA revenge stories with smart payback. And tell me in the comments, what state are you watching from? My name is Caleb Mercer, and until 3 weeks before that morning, the lake never really felt like mine. It was something I grew up around. Something people mentioned quietly at family funerals. Something we pointed at during long drives. But never something I thought would fall on me. Then my grandfather passed. And with that came a sealed packet, a ring of old brass keys, and 4,500 acres of water, shoreline, timber, coves, and silence that had been in my family longer than most county roads. When people hear lake, they picture a vacation spot. What my grandfather left me was different. He left hand-cut boat ramps. Stone markers older than the nearby town. A cedar dock repaired so many times it looked like history nailed into the water. He left fishing ledges, marsh inlets, and a boathouse that still smelled like rope, oil, and old rain. More than anything, he left responsibility. The paperwork called it inherited land. He called it alive. And standing there that morning, watching an HOA president treat it like just another shared utility, something cold settled in my chest. She wasn't taking from a stranger. She'd been making money off my family's legacy. The subdivision sat along the eastern edge of the property. Close enough to see the lake from the higher streets, but nowhere near close enough to claim it. Grand Ridge Estates had about 80 homes, a stone entrance gate, trimmed hedges, and signs filled with words like private, exclusive, and premium living. From the outside, it looked clean and controlled. From the records I would later pull, it looked like a slow land grab hidden behind friendly branding. And right at the center of it all was Dana Mercer. She spoke the way people do when they're used to winning small arguments just by acting like they're already over. Calm. Sharp. Confident enough to make anything sound official. She didn't sound like someone asking to keep access. She sounded like someone managing something she believed she owned. That's what got to me first. Not the pump. Not the trucks. Not even the fact that her crew stood on my shoreline like employees at a private resort. It was how comfortable she was. Nobody gets that comfortable taking water from a private lake unless it's been happening for a long time, or unless everyone around them has been convinced it belongs to the HOA. And judging by how none of those workers even looked at me, Dana hadn't just crossed a line. She had erased it. I didn't argue with her. Not yet. I stepped off the dock, pulled out my phone, and started recording everything. The pump system. The hoses. The truck logos. The meter bolted into the line. Even the deep tire tracks carved into the mud near my grandfather's shed. Dana noticed and gave me that same calm smile, like she thought I was recording something I could never stop. Then one of the drivers said something that changed everything. "Do you want today's ticket signed here?" he asked her. "Or at the upper gate like last month?" Last month? Not last week. Not first delivery. Last month. I turned to him. How many times have you been here? He froze. Like he just realized I wasn't part of whatever system he had walked into. Dana stepped in quickly. That's not your concern, she said. These are scheduled draws for community use. Scheduled draws. Community use. Those weren't random words. That sounded practiced. I aimed my camera back at the steel meter, and that's when I saw it. The numbers weren't low. They were high. High enough to tell their own story. Water had been flowing through that system for a long time. Enough to stain the metal. Enough to strip the ground bare. Enough to prove this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was organized. By the time I walked back up from the dock, something had shifted. I wasn't thinking like someone who just inherited land. I was thinking like someone standing in the middle of a long-running operation. Dana followed right behind me, her heels tapping against the uneven boards, still carrying herself like I'd either accept this, or drown in paperwork I hadn't seen yet. Then I noticed the board mounted beside the service shed. White plastic. Sun-faded edges. 3 laminated notices clipped under cracked acrylic. The first listed seasonal access rules. The second talked about landscape draw limits. The third made my stomach drop. Water distribution priority schedule. There it was. Clear as day. Pool fills. Lawn recovery. Shared shoreline maintenance. Private dock cleaning. And something labeled emergency reserve delivery. Not county terms. Not state terms. HOA terms. They weren't just taking water. They had turned it into a system. Packaged it. Ranked it. Scheduled it. And sold it back to homeowners as a premium feature. I pulled one of the pages free and scanned it quickly. Some homes qualified for higher draw limits. Premium lots got increased access. During drought periods, service fees went up. Tanker deliveries could be approved by the board for critical property protection. Someone had built a full business model. Using water that didn't belong to them. Dana folded her arms, her voice sharper now. Put that back. I looked straight at her. You're charging people for water from my lake. For community support infrastructure, she replied calmly. You should be careful how you phrase that. That response told me everything. People who panic deny it. People who've been doing it for years, reword it. I kept reading the board. A laminated map showed colored lines running from the East Cove into the subdivision. Another notice talked about temporary pumping increases during dry months. And in the corner, there was a vendor sheet listing names, route windows, and billing codes. They had contractors. Schedules. Payment systems. Procedures. This was never some side setup. This was organized. And the worst part? How normal they made it look. Not hidden in the dark, hidden in routine. Hidden behind clipboards, meeting notes, maintenance terms, and the quiet confidence that the real owner either wouldn't notice, or wouldn't understand what he was seeing. I folded the schedule and slid it under my arm. Dana stepped closer. Those documents stay here. I looked her in the eyes for the first time without saying a word. Because by then, one thing was clear. The HOA wasn't taking water to survive. They were selling it. I didn't shut the pumps down that day. That's what Dana expected. She expected me to lose it. To yell. To call the sheriff too soon. To react before I understood what she had built. People like her depend on that. They turn anger into confusion, confusion into delay, and delay into just enough time to bury the truth under paperwork, meeting logs, and fake authority. So I stayed quiet. I drove into town with the distribution schedule sitting beside me and spent the rest of the day in the county records office, flipping through plats, easements, tax parcels, and water use files that smelled like dust and old paper. Slowly, the full picture started to form. The HOA boundary didn't reach my shoreline. There was no easement giving Grand Ridge Estates the right to draw water. No deed transfer. No utility access. No emergency agreement. Nothing that allowed anyone to install industrial pumps on private land and sell what came out of it. Which meant Dana wasn't working in a gray area. She was standing in the middle of a paper trail she hoped no one would ever check. Then the clerk handed me a thin file tied with a faded red string. Older records connected to my grandfather's land. Inside were survey updates, denied access requests, and one letter I had to read twice before setting it down. Years ago, the HOA had already asked for shared lake access. My grandfather said no. Not casually. Not unclear. He denied it in writing and had it officially recorded. That changed everything. This wasn't confusion passed down over time. Dana and the board didn't just lack permission. They had been told no, and built a business anyway. The next morning, Dana showed up again. Not with an apology. Not asking to stop the pumps. She pulled up in a black SUV, parked beside the boathouse like she owned the place, and walked toward me with a leather folder under her arm. Same white blazer. Same controlled smile. Same look of someone who thinks paperwork beats reality. I figured you'd calm down overnight, she said. I leaned on the railing and let her speak. She opened the folder and slid out clean, freshly printed pages. Board meeting notes. Usage reports. A typed memo about long-standing community water coordination. Everything looked official. Everything was designed to make this seem real. Your grandfather understood cooperation, she said. He wasn't against the community. The lie was smooth. Almost practiced. I held her gaze. I found his letter. Something shifted in her face. Just for a second. Then it was gone. You found one part of an old conversation, she said. That doesn't change reality. The neighborhood has relied on this access for years. You inherited land, Mr. Mercer, not the right to disrupt an entire community. There it was. Not a defense. A threat, dressed up as responsibility. She wasn't talking to me like the owner of the lake. She was talking to me like I was a problem. Just another heir she expected to be emotional, overwhelmed, and easy to push aside. That was her mistake. Because the moment she told me what I had inherited, I knew she still thought she was in control. After she left, I went back to the records office and asked for everything tied to the original lake parcel, not just the newer files. The clerk disappeared into storage and came back with a gray box packed with old maps, handwritten notes, and recorded documents older than most homes in Grand Ridge Estates. That's where I found it. Buried behind an old shoreline survey. A recorded restriction signed the year my grandfather expanded the boathouse. It wasn't long, about a page and a half, but every line mattered. The lake, its feeder channels, and all water rights were exclusive to the property owner. No third-party access. No commercial use. No shared rights without a recorded agreement. And any unauthorized removal for resale or paid distribution would count as conversion of private resources, subject to recovery. I read it once. Then again, slower. Dana's entire operation depended on one thing. That nobody would dig deep enough to find that document. But there it was. Stamped. Filed. Still valid. Which meant this wasn't a gray area. The HOA had been pumping private water, packaging it, and selling it through a system that had no legal standing. This wasn't trespassing anymore. This was theft. And once you add billing records, vendor routes, and board approvals, this wasn't just Dana pushing limits. This was a full operation. I could have shut it down that same day. I had enough proof to confront her. Enough to call a lawyer. Enough to send a notice that would have thrown everything into chaos. But chaos wasn't the goal. Chaos makes people hide things. Destroy records. Shift blame. I wanted everything. Proof so complete they couldn't deny a single gallon. So I waited 7 more days. I said nothing. I parked where the trees gave me a clear view of the East Cove, and I recorded everything. Tankers arriving before sunrise. Hoses locking into place along the shoreline. Meter readings before and after every pump. Board-approved pickups. Even which houses got priority deliveries when the sprinklers inside the subdivision ran too long. I tracked dates, times, truck plates, vendor names, and every invoice I could catch on camera when drivers left paperwork in the pump box. By day 3, the pattern was clear. This wasn't emergency pumping. It wasn't maintenance. This was scheduled extraction tied to money. The same companies returned. The same delivery windows repeated. Premium lots got bigger draws. Tanker runs increased when landscaping crews were on site. Twice I watched Dana Mercer sign off on delivery sheets right beside the dock, like she was managing inventory at a private utility. Then I got the piece I'd been waiting for. One driver left a carbon copy ticket dangling from the clipboard in the service shed. I photographed it front and back. It listed volume, rate, destination code, and a line marked HOA water service billing. That single slip connected the lake directly to money. Now I didn't just have trespassing on video. I had a week of evidence proving Dana had been selling my water while standing on recorded notice. She had never had the right to touch it. And once I saw that, I knew exactly how I would end it. I didn't pick a quiet weekday. I picked Saturday morning, the exact time when Grand Ridge liked to look perfect. Sprinklers running, landscaping crews trimming hedges, homeowners out on their patios pretending this had always been pristine. By 8:30, the tanker truck was already backed up at the shoreline. The steel pump hummed. Dana stood beside the dock with a clipboard, supervising another draw from property she had no right to touch. That's when I drove down. Not alone. My attorney sat in the passenger seat. Behind us, a county water enforcement officer, a sheriff's deputy, and a licensed surveyor carrying a hard case full of maps and record copies. I had every critical document, parcel history, my grandfather's recorded denial, the exclusive water rights restriction, meter photos, delivery logs, and the billing slip tied directly to HOA resale activity. Dana noticed the vehicles. Her expression shifted, not panic yet, just the first crack when someone realizes their control is gone. She stepped forward before I even turned off the engine. "What is this?" she asked. I got out, closed the door, and walked straight past her to the pump line. "This ends now," I said. The driver backed away. The county officer asked who authorized the draw. Dana started her usual pitch: community dependence, long-standing practice, infrastructure support, prior owner cooperation. Same polished administrative language. But now, with a deputy 3 feet away and a surveyor spreading maps across the tailgate, it sounded hollow. My attorney handed over the recorded filings. The county officer read the restriction once, then slowly again. He looked at the pump, the line, and at Dana. "Do you have a recorded grant permitting extraction from this parcel?" Dana stayed silent. She tried to pivot. "This is a civil misunderstanding." "No," I interrupted. "It's a paid water operation on private property." That line changed the air. The deputy ordered everyone back from the equipment. The county officer stopped the draw immediately pending enforcement review. The surveyor marked the shoreline boundary with fluorescent flags while my attorney photographed the pump housing, meter serials, and the truck manifest. Then the county officer placed a red seal tag across the main valve and another across the pump control box. Just like that, the machine Dana had used to turn my lake into an HOA utility was dead, and the neighborhood was watching. Panic spread fast. Homeowners poured toward the shoreline in golf carts and SUVs, asking why the water stopped, why the sheriff was there, why Dana looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. Then came the second collapse. Once people realized this wasn't a maintenance delay, they asked the one question Dana could never answer publicly: what exactly had the HOA been charging them for? My attorney moved quickly. Preservation notices went out the same day for board emails, payment records, vendor contracts, and distribution logs. By Monday, we traced the first layer. The HOA hadn't just been taking water. They had built budget categories around it: service fees, drought charges, landscape priority billing, premium access adjustments. Some homeowners thought they were paying for backup supply. Others thought the fees were legal water sharing costs. Neither was true. The board had been selling a fiction along with the water. Once invoices were compared to property records, the structure began to collapse. Vendors pointed to Dana. Board members blamed old meeting approvals. Homeowners demanded refunds. Reserve accounts were questioned. Special assessments were scrutinized. What Dana had presented as neighborhood privilege now looked exactly like what it was: a private resource scheme funded by deception and protected by silence. By the end of the week, the board's emergency meeting turned into a public unraveling. Dana wasn't just losing control of the lake, she was losing control of the HOA itself. A week later, the shoreline was quiet again. No diesel engines. No hoses across the dock. No tanker trucks backed in the mud. Just wind moving across 4,500 acres of open water, and the cedar boathouse my grandfather built, standing solid and finally mine. I walked to the end of the dock just before sunset. For the first time since the inheritance, it didn't feel like a burden wrapped in paperwork. It felt like what he meant it to be: protected, not managed by strangers in blazers and board meetings. Dana had treated my family's water like a line item, a utility, a revenue stream. But the lake was never an HOA amenity. It was never hers to control. I didn't win by shouting. I won by reading deeper, waiting longer, and letting the truth become undeniable. That's what people like Dana forget. They think ownership is whatever they can get away with, until someone pushes back. Paper matters. Records matter. And when a family legacy is still written into the land, greed doesn't erase it. It only exposes itself.